The learning today should be L'Ilui Nishmat Alicia Bat Rachel Matil Tiye Nishmata Torah B'Torah Hayim Beganen Tiye Menuchata. And thank you to Eduardo and Sharon and Yosef sponsoring today's learning in her L'Ilui Nishmata. Okay. So the Ramban says like this. The Ramban in his introduction to Sefer Bamidbar. So the Ramban says, HaSefer hazeh kulam mitzvot sha'ah. Really, the whole book of Bamidbar, they're mitzvot that are not for future generations. It was all about things which were necessary for the generation in the desert. They needed when they stood in the desert. And really, this book doesn't have mitzvot that we're going to have generation. Except for a few mitzvot regarding the korbanot, which were left out in Sefer Vayikra and filled in over here. But basically, the vast majority of the book, the stories about the Mishkan, how to protect the Mishkan. But it's not about necessarily mitzvot that we're going to keep in future generations. The problem is, the end of our Parashat, we do have a mitzvah. That's the Dorot. What's the mitzvah at the end of our Parashat? That's for future generations. Daber Israel v'amata lehem v'asu lahem tzitzit. You should make tzitzit. Al kanfei bigdehem, on the corners of your clothing. Le dorotam, for all generations. Explicit. So the real question is, why in the world is the parasha of tzitzit in Sefer Bamidbar? And more importantly, why in Parashat Shelach, connected to the story of the Meraglim? One of only a few mitzvot, or probably the only mitzvah that is Ladorot. We have the mitzvah of Chala, but that's also compared to the idea of Korbanot and the idea of separating. Right? This is nothing to do with Korbanot, nothing to do with the Mishkan. It's a mitzvah that every single one of us has to wear tzitzit on our clothing. So why is it here? So before we can connect and figure out what a tzitzit has to do with the Meraglim, right, what has to do with the spice, let's figure out what is the mitzvah of tzitzit. So let's read the pasuk. V'asu lahem tzitzit. You should make tzitziyot al kanfei bigdehem, on the corners of your garments, the dorotam, for all generations. V'natlenu al tzitzit hakanaf, and you should place on the tzitzit on the corner of your garments petil techelet, a blue thread. V'haya lachem letzitzit, and this will be the tzitzit. Uritem oto, and you're going to look at these tzitziyot. Uzchartem et kol mitzvot Hashem. And you're going to remember all the mitzvot, but you look at the tzitziyot. And this way you won't follow your eyes and your hearts, which cause you to get yourself into trouble. Somehow the tzitzit protects us from that. And when you look at the tzitzit, what do you remember? All the mitzvot. Now, how does that work? Why is it when I look at the tzitzit, I remember all the mitzvot? What is it about that tzitzit that reminds me of all the mitzvot? Oh, so Rashi says, Alan's Tamid Chacham, so he knows what Rashi says. So Rashi says, so actually the Ramban brings the Pshat of Rashi. And the Ramban says, Katav Rashi, Rashi writes, in Pasuk Lametet, and he says like this is what Rashi writes. If you take the numerical value of the word tzitzit, what does that equal? 600. Tzitzit, tzit, tzadi yod, taf, 600. Ushmona chutim, and how many each corner? How many strings does it have? It has 4, which is folded over, which makes 8. That's 608. V'chamisha kesharim, and you have 5 knots. What do you have? Taryag. So whenever I look at uritem otom, when you look at the tzitzit, that reminds me of the miracle value of 613, all the mitzvot in Torah. So Rashi seems to be telling you that's how you remember. Okay? Comes the Rabban says, Velo havinoti zeh. I don't understand Rashi. I don't understand Rashi. Why? So if you look at the way tzitzit is spelled in the Torah, Are chaser yod. Tzitzit is missing a yud. It's spelled tzadi yod, tzadi taf. It's not, sometimes in the Torah it's called maleh, the full spelling, and sometimes it's written chaser, not the full spelling. In the Torah, tzitzit here is spelled chaser. So what do I have? Missing a yud, what do I have? I have 590. I don't have 613 anymore, right? I'm missing 10. So first of all, your gematria doesn't work. That's not how it's spelled in the Torah. That's Ramban's first question. And he asked a bunch of questions on Rashi's. He says, first of all, the idea of 5 knots is not biblical. It's only the Rabbanan. Min Torah, you only need is 1 on each one. Right? So you don't have the 5 knots. Even the 8 strings, and everybody agrees. The Betilal holds 3 in the Gemara. Right? So he has a bunch of questions on Rashi that his gematria doesn't work. But don't worry, Rashi knew how to learn. And there's a Tosfot and Menachot that answers up for Rashi. But that's not our discussion. We want to see the Ramban. Yeah, maybe. But then it's with Tzitzit and the Aseret Dibrot will be together.
Yeah.
Okay, but it doesn't say that here though. So the Ramban says like this. Aval Zikaron, the Ramban says, how do I remember all the mitzvot? Ubechut Techelet is with the blue string, the Techelet string. And the Ramban says words that he repeats in many different places, and they're hard to know what those words mean. And I'll try to give a little understanding, but that's not the main answer I want to focus on. I want to focus on the second answer of the Ramban. He says, how do you remember the mitzvot? From the blue string, the Techelet string. Shiromez lemidat hakolelet hakol. The Techelet is Romez, hints to the midah of kol. Shehi bakol, vehi tachlit hakol. That's the essence of everything. Techelet, which means blue, also comes the word tachlit, which is the essence of everything. Right? And if you look at the word Techelet, what is the middle spell? Take a taf and taf, spells kol. So hidden in the word Techelet is the word kol. The essence of everything is hidden where? In the Techelet. And that's why it says, Hashem berachat Avraham bakol. You bless Avraham with what? With kol. So some idea of kol that incorporates everything, which is found in the Techelet. So if that's the case, it incorporates all of the Torah, which is found in the Techelet. Right? I give you an example. We said this once at a bar mitzvah before. The mitzvot, right? Why are they called mitzvot?
Tzav.
Hashem commanded us, right? Why is it called mitzvah? It's a tzivui, it's a command. So the answer is, there's a relationship going on here. There's a metzaveh, that's God, who's the commander called metzaveh. There's a metzuve, that's us, who's being commanded. And there's a tzav, and there's the command itself. The word mitzvah incorporates all 3 things together. Metzuve, metzaveh, and tzav. All hidden in the word mitzvah. So the idea of mitzvah is every mitzvah is a relationship between the commander, the one who's being commanded, and the command itself. That incorporates everything. That's a mitzvah. Kol takol. Everything is in there. So every mitzvah is not just an act, but it's actually building a relationship between the person, the Hashem who commanded, and us who are being commanded on. And mitzvah itself is the command. Right? That's what the word mitzvah hints to. And that's an idea of kol, maybe, a simple idea of kol. But I want to focus on the second thing. The Techelet has the word kol, which is the tachlit hakol, which incorporates everything, whatever that means. But then the Ramban says more. And he says like this. And he says, first we'll just finish his idea. He says, therefore it says, Uschartem et kol mitzvot Hashem. That's why it adds the word Kol. Remember all the mitzvot Hashem. Okay. But then the Ramban says, he brings the Gemara. And it says, what's the idea of Techelet? How does the Techelet remind me of all the mitzvot? Nesha Techelet dome layam. The Techelet, the string of the tzitzit, which is blue, is compared to what? To the ocean. Layam dome larakia. And the sea looks like the sky, which is also blue. V'rakia dome lekisei hakavod. And the rakia, the sky looks like Hashem's throne of glory. Therefore, when I look at the blue string, I'll remember the ocean, which will remind me of the sky, which will remind me of what? The kisei hakavod. That's the words of the Gemara. And let me ask you a question.
Which Gemara is that?
What?
Which Gemara?
It's in a few places. But it's a Menachot, Gemara Menachot, Dav Mem Gimel, Imam says here. The Menachot discusses the whole idea of tzitzit. A few dapim, they're discussing tzitzit. Now let me ask you a question. Yeah? I live in Houston, Texas. I don't see the ocean. I have to drive to Galveston. And actually, when I get to Galveston, what does the ocean look like? It's not blue. It's brown. It's yellow, murky. I don't know what color it is, right? It doesn't quite remind me of any sky or any cloud of glory. Maybe a gloomy sky day like today too, you know. So how does that work? And
it works in a Yam HaTichon, Rabbi.
Oh, Hannah says it's referring to the Yam HaTichon. We'll see in a second.
Of course.
Only a
or
special.
to the Kinneret or something like that.
We'll see, right? So why can't I look up at the sky directly? Sky's blue. Now remember the kisei hakavod. But, you know, why do I need to see the ocean first? That's first of all. But second, let me ask you another question. Do I know that kisei hakavod is blue? That I look at the ocean, I remember the sky, I remember the kisei hakavod. I didn't know the kisei hakavod was Techelet. That's what I mean. What's Pshat here? So Ramban tells us a fascinating concept. He says that Dimyon Beshem, he says, Gav Hagavun Tachlit Amarot. Not only does the word Techelet represent Tachlit, which means the essence, and we said that's what's hidden in the word Kol, but also Techelet is the essence of all colors. The Tachlit of all colors is the end of all colors. Why? Why is Techelet the end, the Tachlit of all colors? Whenever you look at something from far away, it looks blue. The ocean only looks blue when you see it from a distance. When you go up close, it looks brown, it looks clear, it looks white. You pick it up, it's clear, right? When you look at something from a distance, it looks blue. The idea is as follows. You look at the sky. Why is something from a distance look? But not everything that you look at from a distance looks blue. But there's something profound about this idea. Anything which inherently has no sof, has no end, has no boundaries, looks blue. The ocean is endless. There's actually no boundaries. Even in the concept of when Hashem creates the world, it was a whole in a state of water. And Hashem makes the water recede. And then the land was seen. And Hashem puts the yabasha, the sand, and he says, I placed a boundary that it shouldn't cross. But without the boundary, water goes everywhere. Right? If you don't stop water, it flows. Right? We need to have bayous in Houston. We got to lift up houses. We got to make all kinds of boundaries. Because otherwise, water just goes. Water has no boundaries. In itself, water has no boundaries. Only way to protect us is we create boundaries around the water. And the Chazal say that idea of waves really represent that idea. The waves means the water is always trying to come back and reflood the earth. And the sand reminds it, Gevul, there's a boundary. You're not allowed to cross it. Hashem put boundaries for the water. Right? That's the debate back and forth between the water and the sand. Every time you see a wave. Right? But water has no boundaries. Anything which has no boundaries, telling us, appears as blue. The rakia, the heavens, also have no boundaries. So when I look up, it appears blue. And sof. And the Kisei Kavod, where Hashem's throne, where Hashem sits, is what? Is Ein Sof. Hashem is Ein Sof. Hashem is limitless, infinite. So the idea, the Ramban says, when I look at the blue string, I'll remember Ein Sof. I'll remember the ocean, which has no boundaries, is Ein Sof. I'll remember the sky, which is Ein Sof. And ultimately, I'll remember the Kisei Kavod, that's Ein Sof. So wherever I look in the world, I look down, I see water, I look up, I see blue, I'll remember Kisei Kavod. I'll remember Hashem, Ein Sof. That's the hint. Every time I see a blue string. I see the blue string in the Techelet.
Rabbi,
Get to your question.
השם הוא כל יכול, אז כל יכול זה גם, יש בזה את כף למד, כמו במילה תכלת, כל יכול, right? רבי?
כן, לא הבנתי.
אומרים על השם שהוא כל יכול. כל יכול, כף למד. זה גם כמו
זה מידת קול. כן, זה מידת קול. That's the first thing that I'm done. כן, נכון. Yeah, so we're focusing on the second part of the Ramban. But now, the other strings of the tzitzit, the customs to have them what color? Lavan, white. Why is the custom to have them lavan, to have them white? Purity, okay. Why does lavan represent purity? Clean, okay, good. Now, if you take all the colors of the spectrum, and you put them in a centrifuge, and you spin it really fast, what color do you see?
White.
You see white.
White.
White is the foundation of all color. Every color is in a sense imposed on white. But when you spin all the colors in the centrifuge, the color you're going to see is what? Is lavan, is white. Right? And that's why it says by the Torah, it's written, right? Shachor al gabe lavan. Right? Or esh shechora al gabe esh levana. Right? It's black written on top of white, which means white is the foundation of all color. Everything else is imposed and written on top of white. That's lavan. So when I look at tzitzit, what does it remind me? The white reminds me the beginning, the foundation of everything. The blue reminds me the sof, the end. So when I look at the tzitzit, I remember the world from beginning.
Yeah, this will help.
Lavan. Right? I see lavan, I see white, which connotes the beginning, and I see techelet, blue, which is Ein Sof, which is Hashem, which is the end. So I see the full spectrum. So I see everything together at once. It reminds me of all of Torah. Yeah? So far, so good?
So
Okay.
why can I have just two strings? One white, one blue one?
Well, we'll get to it in a second. Let's see, we'll get to you. Good. Now, the question is also, but why is this specifically put on clothing? The mitzvah is what?
Four corners.
To put it on your clothing, right? Reality, the mitzvah is if you're wearing a four-corner garment, a clothing which has four corners, you put tzitzit on it. Our clothing today are not designed with four corners. Therefore, we specifically wear something which has four corners to fulfill the mitzvah, right? But really, it was specifically made for what? For clothing. Something which is not a beged, which is not clothing, is not chayav and tzitzit. Why only on clothing is this mitzvah? So, Maharal says something fascinating. The Maharal writes, Maharal explains, he says, how many strings are there? If you add up all four corners, how many strings do we have? 32. Very good. 8 times 4. 8, 8, 8, and 8. It's 32. That's the gematria of lev, right? Lamed bet. Lamed bet. 32 strings. Now, Maharal says, what is the gematria of kavod? Honor. Is also 32. What does kavod have to do with anything? See, what do clothing do? Right? They cover you up. In reality, the word in Hebrew for clothing is levush. What does levush come for? Levush actually made up of two words. Lo bosh. Levush means lo bosh. I'm not embarrassed.
Yeah.
When I have clothing, I'm lo bosh. That's why it's called levush, right? Clothing hides. Like we said many times in the class, human beings are 98.5% chimpanzees. The difference between us and a chimpanzee is 1.5%. Not a huge difference, right? Our physical bodies are just monkeys. And we want to hide that. It's an embarrassment, right? The rest of the world wants to let it out and show it to you. And the answer is, what do you show me? You're a gorilla? I'm a human being. I want to hide that. It's an embarrassment. Right? It doesn't show who I am, right? That's lobosh. So I don't want to be embarrassed. I cover up. That's levush. Therefore, Rabbi Yochanan used to call his clothing mechabdai. Those that bring me honor, they bring me dignity, kavod. Therefore, the Maharal says no coincidence. We have a numerical value of 32, which is equals kavod. What? On the tzitziot. Because the tzitzit are very much connected to the concept of what? On the clothing, which gives kavod. Now the question now is, but let's think a little bit more. So, but it's still, what is the relationship between the tzitzit and the clothing? What is in the tzitzit that reveals this concept of kavod? So here, I'm going to share the words with the Baal HaMaor. Baal HaMaor is one of the greatest Rishonim. If you open up any Gemara, any Talmud Bavli, Babylonian Talmud, in the back, the Ramban, we just learned his Pirush, also has a commentary. He actually has, Baal HaMaor wrote a book, and the Ramban wrote a sefer arguing, disagreeing with the Baal HaMaor. And you see the debates, right? It's called Milchamot Hashem, the wars of Hashem, right? So Baal HaMaor, you find the back of the Gemara, he was preceded the Ramban. Lived probably in the 11th and in the 12th, early in the 12th century. And he says a fascinating concept. And he says, the neshama of a person is called kavod. And he proves it to you. Pesukim and Tehillim throughout refer to the neshama as kavod. Leman yezamelcha kavod velo yidom. In order that my kavod, me, my neshama, should sing to you, velo yidom, and not be silent. Ura kevodi, ura nevel. Right? Awaken my kavod. What's that? My neshama should awaken. Right? The neshama throughout, he brings many, many sources. The idea of neshama is referred to as what? As kavod. Why is the neshama referred to as kavod? Where's the neshama taken from? The neshamot of every single Jew is taken from where? Under the kisah kavod. It's taken from there. Right? Now, every single neshama actually desires kavod. And where do we see this from? What does the word neshama really mean? Nefesh. So I'll bring you a pasuk. Avraham Avinu wants to bury Sarai Menu. He goes to Ephron and he says, Im nafshechem likvor et metim lefanai. What's the shortage of nafshechem? Nefesh. What is he saying? Is it your desire to bury my dead before you? Im nafshechem, do you desire, do you want, or you allow me to bury, right? Im nafshechem. So actually the word neshama, nefesh, means desire, ratzon, means will. Right? It means the will. That's what it means. Which means every neshama, which was taken from under the kisah kavod, desires kavod. Right? It's human nature, that's why we run after it. It's misplaced kavod, but because the neshama, in a sense, wants to break free. It's infinite, part of Hashem. Now, there's two ways we break free. How do we break free, Yankale? There's two ways we break free. There's an immature way of breaking free. When you give me a rule, when you put laws, the most fun thing to do is what?
Break them.
Let's break them, right? That's our desire for chit, right? We don't want to be, that's what I was listening. We don't want to be restrained, held back. We're nefesh. Our nefesh is infinite. Our desire is to break free. Right? Hashem put us in a body. We're confined. We're constrained. We can't shine. We can't really be who we are. Right? So we want to, our desire is to break free and reveal our glory, reveal who we really are. But we can't. So there's two ways we can break free. We can at least feel that feeling of breaking free. We can break all the rules in the world, right? That sense of freedom. And teenagers are great on that. That's what they want to do, right? Every second of the day, they want to break free. They want to break every rule. That's what makes it fun in life, right? The more rules you make, the more they want to break them. That's chet, right? That's an immature. That's one level of breaking free. But in a deeper sense, the neshama is infinite. It wants to connect back to its source, to Ein Sof, to no end, to infinity. So it's trying to connect to that. Right, so you can do it in an immature and really limited way through chet, through sinning, but in a much deeper way, through connecting back to your source, under the kisah kavod where you came from. Right, that's nefesh, and that's what the neshama wants. It's ratzon, it's to become infinite and reconnect, to shine out, to reveal its glory, in a sense, really the glory of Hashem, who created it and is a part of it. Right, that's the idea of neshama. That's why it's called kavod. Right? That's what's on. What reminds us to do that? The tzitzit. The tzitzit, which is lavan, is white, and techelet, and blue, which means the foundation is white from beginning until the end. I want to reach this Ein Sof. I want to reach infinity. I want to connect to my source under the kiseh kavod. Right? So the Shema desires to do that. It wants to break free. So the tzitzit are placed on the bigdei kavod, on the clothing which represent kavod, which represent the neshama. And the idea, when you look at your clothing, you look at the tzitziyot, you remember yourself, what is the function of the neshama? What's its goal? What is the kavod here? What is the neshama trying to accomplish here? It's going to connect from beginning all the way to Ein Sof. Right? That's why tzitzit are specifically on clothing. Right? It's an amazing concept. So every time you look at the tzitzit, what are you remembering? That I am. And neshama is kavod, is dignity. And kavod really means, neshama really means ratzon, desire. And its greatest desire is to connect back to its source. So I look at the tzitzit, which are white. It's the beginning, the foundation, which is blue, which is techelet, which reminds me of the kiseh kavod, from the ocean, which has no boundaries, no end. I don't want to have boundaries. Reminds you of the sky, no boundaries. Connecting the kiseh kavod, Ein Sof, obviously no boundaries. And that's what I'm trying to connect back to. That's every time I look at the tzitzit, that's what I remember. Now, why is it here in Parashat Shelach? As Rambam pointed out, there are no other mitzvot that are no hake for generations except this one. Why is it here? If you look at the chet of the meraglim. So we learned many times in the famous Gemara. What does the Gemara say? What was the mistake of the spies? So Gemara based on a pasuk in Echa. If you look at the book of Echa that we read on Tisha B'Av, in English it's called Lamentations, right? Laments. It's written in the order of the Aleph Bet. Every chapter except for the last one is written in the order of the Aleph Bet. And the third chapter is 3 psukim. Aleph, 3 psukim Bet, 3 psukim in the order of the Aleph Bet. Except there is one letter that's out of order. Instead of saying Samach Ayin Peh, what do we have? Samach Peh, then Ayin. The Peh and the Ayin are flipped. So the Gemara asks, Mipnei ma higdimu Peh la'ayin? Why did we put the Peh before the Ayin? Why is it out of order?
כי המרגלים הוציאו את דיבת הארץ רעה.
Oh, very good, Chana. Very good. Because the meraglim. You see, there's two ways of seeing. I can be objectively, look out into the crowd and see what I observe and describe what I just saw. But most of us don't see that way. We generally see what we want to see. Lahagdim pe la'ayin means what my mouth says is what my eyes saw. What's normal you should do is your eyes should see and then describe what you're seeing. But what the Meraglim did was higdimu peh la'ain. What they wanted to see, what they saw what they wanted to see. Which means they didn't want to go into Eretz Yisrael. For whatever reasons they had, they didn't want to go into Eretz Yisrael. They liked the spirituality of the Midbar, surrounded by the clouds of glory. They were afraid of whatever the story was, they didn't want to go. So once they didn't want to go, so they saw what they wanted to see. People were dying all around them. So Midrash brings out, why were they dying all around them? They wanted the people to be busy with burying their dead and not to notice the spies. So it was letovatam, for their benefit, that people were dying all around them, so they can actually not get caught. But instead, what do they see? It's a land that kills its inhabitants. Nobody can survive there. Why do they see that instead of seeing the ness of wherever they went, people died, so they should notice them? Because that's not what they wanted to see. Right? They wanted to see that it's not a place we should go to. The reason why we have Tisha B'Av, we have Megillat Techa, is because of the spies. So the Megillat Techa is teaching us, you want to know why? They saw what their mouth said, out of order. They didn't see reality for what it was. They saw it, what they wanted to see. Right? And that's really the world today, right? You turn on any news station, no matter what angle you are, everybody sees what their philosophy is. I believe X, and therefore exactly what's happening in the world is exactly X, right? There's nobody who actually can interpret what's going on in the world. It's whatever my preconceived political slant, whatever my feelings, whatever it is I have in my agenda I have, that's exactly what I see. And every single event in history is actually interpreted exactly through those lenses. Peh la'ain, what I want to see is reality, and that's it. And everything I see fits exactly into my little box. That's the world today. And that was the Meraglim. That was a mistake. So the tzitzit is coming to teach us, don't look at reality. Look at the tzitzit. Tzitzit will remind you how to see reality the way it really is. Uritem oto, you should see them. When you look at the tzitziyot, see them. And you'll see reality from beginning, from Lavan, from its foundation, until blue, until Ein Sof. You see reality from one end to the other. You see everything with perfect clarity. And therefore, lo taturu acharei levavchem acharei einechem. You're not going to run after what your desire, what your eyes are. You're not going to see what your desire, what you want, or what your eyes want to see. You're going to see reality as is. And therefore, you'll remember everything. So the antidote for the mistake of the Meraglim is tzitzit. So Torah specifically taught us one mitzvah in Sefer Bamidbar to counter the Meraglim. And that's why it's here.
המרגלים גם כן תרו.
They taru. כן.
לא תטורו.
כן, לא תטורו. That's right.
אל תעשו מה
כן.
שהמרגלים עשו.
כן. בדיוק. Beautiful. Right? So let's finish with this idea. The final, Philippe asked the question. So why don't we wear Techelet today? Why don't we wear Techelet today? So I know some people today started wearing it. There are people who are wearing it. And their logic is, it's a very sound logic. We're not for sure what it is. But if you put it on, it doesn't hurt. Right? There's no isur to wear a blue string or red string even. It's not prohibited. Its custom is to be white for the reason we explained, but it can be. So if you got it right, you mekayem mitzvah deoraita. If you got it wrong, nothing happened. You still yotzei the mitzvah without it. So therefore they started putting it on. It was a very sound argument. So why don't we put it on, really, most of us? So we have a Midrash. Midrash Rabban in this week's Parashat says that Techelet was nignaz. It was hidden. After the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed, the Techelet was nignaz. It was hidden. It wasn't that we forgot what it looked like. Now we don't know what blood of what kind of squid or fish it comes from. It was nignaz. It was hidden, which means we're not supposed to have it. And the Gaon Bevilna writes, when Mashiach comes, it'll be revealed. But we're not supposed to know that now. Why not? Because once the Bet HaMikdash is destroyed, our ability to see reality the way it is lost. We can't see anymore. So if I look at the tzitziyot, it's not going to remind me to see. I can't see clearly anymore. So to remind us of the idea that every time you look at your tzitzit, you should remember that I lost my ability to see. I'm biased, and I don't see things clearly. And that's why it was nignaz. to remind us we don't have the Techelet anymore. We can't see reality other than Sof. We don't have Bet HaMikdash. We don't have that clarity anymore. But don't fool yourself thinking you know everything and see everything. Walk around life knowing that you don't see everything. There's a lot you don't see, a lot you don't understand. So Techelet is nignaz. It's hidden. We don't have it. And that's why the custom is we don't put it on. Yael Mevina said, when Mashiach comes, will be revealed. We're not supposed to have it. That's the other argument of why not to wear it. Right? That's the idea of the Techelet. But again, the Tzitzit teaches us this idea of what? Of seeing reality the way it is, from beginning to end. See the world with perfect clarity. It reminds us of who we are. On our clothing, we are kavod. Neshama is kavod. Its desire is connect to infinity and have no boundaries. That's why we don't like boundaries, because we're not meant to be bound in this physical body. But instead of doing it in a mature, breaking your boundaries, which is called chet, which is sinning, mature is connecting to your source. So it really is. And the tzitzit are there every single time we look at them to remind us of that idea, that our kavod, our clothing, which reminds us of our neshama, which is mechabdai, to connect us to reality. Okay, the shiur should be, it was Ne'u Nishmat, Alisa ben Achal Matil, Tiyah Nishmat Torah Chaim, Beganen, Tiyah Meduchata. And again, Chazak Baruch for all those who sponsored and donated. We're going to say Kaddish and Ashkava. Rabbi Hanania ben Akasha Omer, רצה הקדוש ברוך הוא לזכות את ישראל, לפיכך הרבה להם תורה